Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you want where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Hey Sean, you got a party, got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced lies.
It's the way you wanna be. Debts and childhood poverty. Oh, somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy. Oh yeah. Barefaced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so...
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Very good evening. Sunday the 2nd of November 2025. My name is Roger May. You'll have to excuse me. This is a Recce St 9 transmission. You'll have to excuse me. I am sniffling a bit, so my apologies. I've picked up a bug. I spent the last couple of days not very well at all. But we're here. I've dosed myself up and we will get through what we need to get through. I've got something very specific to share this evening, really. So it is based upon, I think, what I released. I'm sure it was last Sunday. I shared. If it wasn't last Sunday, it was the Sunday before. So it was very recently I shared. And it's regarding some political commentary. Now, to put this in context, I have been campaigning on a national inquiry into the grooming gangs long before most people knew what a national inquiry was, never mind the grooming gangs. It's been 7 years I've been campaigning. I'll have hundreds of people in my hometown who will quantify what I have done to try and get this over the line. So I believe on that basis, never mind anything else, I have a right to comment on the public discourse. And what happened 2 weeks ago on a Saturday night, Sunday, was Sky News ran with a story where they're trying to promote Jim Gamble, and I forget the other lady's name, as potential chairs of the grooming gang inquiry. The problem, of course, was one was a former police officer with Labour Party links, and the other one was already chair of some government committee or another, but also was Social Worker of the Year 2012. And the likes of Fiona Goddard, Ellie Ann Reynolds, and a few of the others essentially resigned from the survivors panel. And that was one of the reasons why. And then there were other reasons why, which was included the apparent desire to expand the remit to include a wider issue, which would inadvertently have hidden what this campaign has been about from the outset. So when that happened, Fiona Goddard, Eliane Reynolds issued statements. They stood alongside, or their voices were amplified by politicians. Fiona very much amplified by the Conservatives, as she had been for some time, and Eliane Reynolds was amplified by Reform. And they, by resigning the way they did, they opened themselves up to scrutiny. Their motivations, rightly or wrongly, people queried their motivations. Now, what then took place was when it looked like Jess Phillips was wobbling, because these survivors wanted Jess Phillips' resignation. When it looked like Jess Phillips was wobbling and she might actually be forced to resign, out of nowhere came a group of survivors led by Samantha Walker-Roberts. From Oldham, she's from Oldham, who advocated on behalf of Jess Phillips, said she was doing a great job, wanted her to remain in post, and that actually did quit if she quit. And I looked at that play out, and I felt very uncomfortable. And those of you who watched last week's transmission will have seen that I was uncomfortable doing what I did, but I felt I had a duty to do that, which was demonstrate to people, and this is something that the mainstream media did not do. GB News nor Talk Vid did this, and they knew this, by the way. GB News definitely knew, because I know Charlie Peters knew this information. And that was to share in the public discourse Samantha's political position. She was no longer a survivor, she was a political campaigner. In fact, she was a Labour Party activist, because she was advocating on behalf of Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister. And I released 2 videos and an interview from Good Morning Britain. Now, the Good Morning Britain, GMB Good Morning Britain interview was done on TV. So that went out that very, very week, where she came out advocating Jess Phillips. And then I shared 2 pieces of information, and I want to bring these up and I want to play them for you now, so we are all on the same page. So just give me 1 second. The first piece of information is, of course, I think it was a TikTok live brief, live stream that Samantha herself was involved in, not hiding her name or anything. And she very, very clearly stated that we need to consider the bigger picture. Now, this isn't me saying it, this is her saying it. And I'll play it because I think it's important that you hear it.
I'm assuming though. I'm assuming though.
One second. Consider was talking. Go on, Consider. but Warrior, I'm just academically, one would have to do it group and then do a separate one for singles, right?
Yeah.
They don't have enough police force
Oh my
to attack every single individual, unfortunately.
They've literally worded it on the paperwork saying group-based only, dedicated to this whole national inquiry.
Yeah, I understand how that can be disappointing, and I agree with you, but at the same time, you have to understand they'd have to go to every single individual, and it would take a lot of time and also a lot of police effort, which I know they're notoriously not famous for doing, but yeah.
What do you mean?
It's not surprising to me.
The police aren't involved in the inquiry.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the police.
You just said that.
It's a matter of getting all the paperwork, gathering and reading through it, which can take years because it's going to be thousands of pages.
Yeah, but I'm assuming if you're going to accost the person who's actually done said crime, you need to have law enforcement involved. Otherwise, nothing happens.
That's not what this report is about. I think like from like Consider just said, from kind of like a statistical kind of thing, they would have to do like these group-based analysis and stuff first. Have they said to you though that like they're not going to look at anybody else? Like, is that a complete
yeah, it's the framework from the government. Yeah.
Right,
wow.
That's a quick one, Warrior. I just wanted to mention, look, I am not here to...
So I'm just going to pause that there. So Samantha Roberts there, Walker-Roberts there, you can clearly see in the top left-hand corner, is speaking, and she's unhappy about what looks like the framework for the national inquiry. That's the exchange that just took place. She's articulating that point of view on a live stream. I don't know how many were on that live stream, but I would imagine hundreds. And she's not hiding her identity at all, is she? Now, the next bit.
Blame anybody, and I'm not here for a minute to prove that what that female said was wrong. What I'm trying to gather here is obviously how come there were so many people were allowed on the panel, on the stage before her, and as soon as she came up and she was dropped. Now the guy who I'm coming here is, we're going to ask him these questions. So if you stick around, it should be here around 9:30 to 10. I'm only going to have few people on the panel. I'm not going to have full panel, and I'm not going to allow everybody to jump on the panel. However, if you have a question for that person, you can ask in a comment, and we will try to ask that question for you, or we will invite you for 1 minute and ask that question.
It's an Asian
but remember
accent.
that, guys. I'm not doing this, to disrespect or insult that female. I'm only doing this to find out what is behind this, because a lot of people are calling this as a demonstration, right? Agree? That's what they're calling on this.
I mean, the answer is...
Hang on one second. I just want to address Samantha, like her voice matters to me more. I've given you a follow, Samantha. Can you... can we have a chat about, there's a lot to unpack in that, and I'm seriously really interested in that, but it's obviously a lot to unpack on a live. I have heard what you've said.
I'm just trying to get it shared out there, because the consultation is starting next week, and the charity the NWG can alter what the government have set as framework, but yet the government aren't responding to this concern, and I'm arguing that I don't fit this narrative. So they need to either tell me I'm silenced or allow it for other CSE victims to be part of it.
Yeah. No.
Okay, so she's explained herself there. She's campaigned specifically to widen the remit to include a wider group of child sex exploitation victims and not just the group-based ones. And she believes if it isn't widened, then she's silenced. So she's articulated it. She understands exactly what's going on. Yeah. She's campaigning to widen the remit beyond the grooming gangs, beyond the group-based child sexual exploitation. Clear? And she's engaging as Samantha. You can hear the exchange between herself and the facilitator. So there's no hiding there, is there?
I agree. I've given you a follow. Yeah, please, can we kind of correspond about it? Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for coming up and, you know, highlighting that. And
Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
Walaikum salam.
I'm sorry that you have had to deal with that.
I'm thinking of the bigger picture, and the statistics that will come out of this will just feed the reform and Tommy Robinson, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
needs to be equal and fair, and it was.
I'm thinking of the bigger picture. And the statistics that will come out will feed Tommy Robinson and reform. She said that. Clear? I did not put any words in her mouth. She said that. She made a very clear political position of not just about wanting to include herself and the wider demographic of children who perhaps abused, which is laudable. And I understand. I don't necessarily agree, but I understand, of course, you know. If you've been a survivor, if you've been a victim and your case hasn't been heard and this is the only inquiry that's coming along, and you'd want to campaign to broaden it, to include you. I get that. But that's not where she finishes. She then finishes saying, I'm thinking of the bigger picture. No ambiguities. And she's making a clear reference there to the statistics that will come out of this will feed Tommy Robinson and reform. So she's now a political activist, isn't she? She's a party political activist. Is my analysis in any way insulting of her? Am I calling her names? Am I harassing her? I'm a campaigner who has campaigned on this issue for 7 years. I've helped get the national inquiry to where it is, and now I'm fighting to make sure that the national inquiry remains focused. Nowhere have I called Samantha any names, insulted her, abused her. I've definitely not harassed her, have I? The next one, and this, what I'm playing to you now, actually goes back to January. So this next one I'm playing you, I found a date because it's pinned on I've got it from the Times Radio's own Twitter feed. And it's in January. This is what came out. And again, I'll play it for the lawyers who are watching this and the police who are watching this, seeing if they can find any way of suing me or coming and dawn raiding my house and arresting me. I'll play the next one, and that's on Times Radio. That's an interview she voluntarily gave on Times Radio, and that interview went out in January. Now, I picked up on it last week because it was only meaningful for me last week once Samantha entered this party political space. I had this, what I've just played to you, from around the time she was interviewed in that. It was of no value to me. I had no interest in it until she entered a party political space defending Jess Phillips. And at that point, she stops being just a survivor. I'm not criticizing or demeaning her experiences. In fact, I've campaigned myself to bring her experiences into the public domain. Something she's tried to hide and revise the history, because a number of years ago, those of you who followed me on this journey will know that a great Manchester Evening News reporter, Charlotte Green, who now works for some fact-checking organisation, attempted to do a hit piece on me with evidence from Samantha claiming I'd done this or done that. What I released at the time was correspondence between myself and her husband. So I've campaigned on behalf of Samantha. So the Times Radio.
And Samantha, what's your feeling on the issue of the idea of, ethnicity and, framing this as Muslim or, Pakistani? What is your feeling about that?
To be honest, it infuriates me. I'm a reverted Muslim myself, and I chose to do that, 4 years ago. Race is nothing to do with this at all.
Samantha, I'd like to start with you. We're really grateful for you coming on because you have been through so much as a survivor. If you don't mind, could you just tell my listeners your story of what you went through, what happened to you in Oldham?
Yes, of course. I suffered a sexual assault in a church in 2006, and from there I went to the police station to report it. There was 2 men behind me at the desk clerk, and the officer told me to come back when I had sobered up. The men behind me offered to give me a lift home, and the desk clerk suggested that was a good idea. And from there, I was subjected to sexual abuse and then dropped off. Another man sexually abused me, and then from there I got in a taxi thinking I was going to get home, and then I was subjected to an ordeal throughout the whole night until the next day.
And how old were you at this point, Samantha?
I was 12.
Oh my God. I mean, I am so sorry. That is just absolutely awful. Absolutely awful. So you're 12 years old. This terrible thing happens to you. Do you know how many men attacked you that evening and raped you that evening?
Overall, it was 9.
Oh my God. I mean, that is just absolutely horrific. And do you know the ethnicity of those men? Could you speak to that?
The predominant 5 from the property was Bengali, and then Sarwar Ali, who was given his passport back and fled, was an Iraqi.
And Samantha, what's your feeling on the issue of the idea of, ethnicity and, framing this as Muslim or, Pakistani? What is your feeling about that?
To be honest, it infuriates me. I'm a reverted Muslim myself, and I chose to do that, 4 years ago. Race is nothing to do with this at all.
Wow. So just tell us a bit about that. So you've converted to being Muslim. What, why? How did that come about?
I know a few other Muslims, and being around them and learning about the Quran, specifically they said about the Quran that life is a test. And I feel that my life has been a huge test. And I just felt a lot of comfort within it.
And so what would your message be to people who are wanting to frame this as this is a specifically Muslim problem?
That your voices are not wanted.
And you're really clear about this?
100%, yeah. This is about a predator, an abuser. It doesn't matter who you are. If you have raped a child, then that is about you. It's not about race.
That's an interview with the Times. I've not edited it, by the way. The Times clipped it in such a way where it started with the reference of her being a reverted Muslim myself, and race has nothing to do with it. And then it went on to that clip, and then it finished where it did, where it came back to that and finished. So I've not done that for clickbait or anything like that. That's exactly, I picked it up exactly as it is from the Times Radio's X feed. And more so, here, give me 1 second. I'll find it for you so you can see it yourself. Just give me 1 second. I just want to find it. Here you go. Times Radio. And they quote us specifically. You can see the date, 12th of January 2025. It infuriates me. I'm a reverted Muslim myself. Race has nothing to do with this at all. Oldham sexual abuse survivor Samantha Walker-Roberts discusses why she converted to Islam and says race has nothing to do with the sexual abuse she faced. Okay? So I'm not done. I've not made any of this up, have I? And all I've done is be consistent to bringing to public attention that the Samantha Walker-Roberts, who's been promoted on GB News and all the others, and I've got a whole host of links, The Guardian, the representative, the spokesperson, the group of 5 who are defending Jess Phillips. She has a political position that race has nothing to do with it, and that people who say there's a Pakistani issue we need to look at, your voices are not wanted. It's on record. It's not me. It's on record in the public domain. And that she's thinking of the bigger picture and what the statistics will show and how Tommy Robinson and Reform will use it. So that's a party political position. And I believe, and I'm sure, if the police want to arrest me, or if the lawyers want to sue me, I'll sue you in whichever court you want, whether it's the High Court, or whether it's in the Magistrates Court or a Crown Court. My preference is a Crown Court with a jury. Greater Manchester Police, so we're clear. But I have not in any way harassed her by bringing to public attention the comments made by an individual who is now campaigning not just to widen the inquiry, but campaigning on behalf of Jess Phillips and the Labour Party. Yes? So I got this. He says, looking for the... on Friday. Happy Friday, Raja. Sorry if you can't read this. It's so I can get it in the thing in the page, but I'll read it to you. He says, I'll bring it up on my phone so I can read it. It's from a man called David Greenwood. David Greenwood sat next to me, or 2 people away from me, at a debate in London a couple of weeks ago. And his starting position was not wanting to frame this through the racial lens, and then he shifted his position as the debate went on. I think it was the Agora Debating Club that was streamed live, so it's there. Sorry, who do I need to block? Okay, Pakistan is the best country for women's rights. Okay, that's blocked. Okay. I have been asked by Samantha Walker-Roberts to write to you concerning your recent comments about her. She has sent me a link to your YouTube video of approximately the 24th of October 2025. So that's last Sunday night, with a duration of 1 hour 25 minutes and 30 seconds. Thank you for getting the exact length. She has also sent screenshots of your subsequent X posts. Your YouTube video details Samantha Walker-Roberts. It plays a Good Morning Britain video on which Miss Walker-Roberts appeared. I see you don't mention the date, the time and the length of that. David. You comment on her views. You go on to comment on her background, police failures, and that 7 men raped her in one night. Is that not what you just heard herself share on the Times Radio interview? You state she left her husband, who later committed suicide. You state she hangs out with Pakistani men. You mentioned Miss Walker groomed girls to falsely explain what grooming is like. No, I didn't. I said she trained girls to claim that somehow I was involved in a grooming gang and that I'd groomed them. So if you want to talk about specifics, David, that's the specifics of that. And this is well documented for those of you who follow this work. It goes back several years. You say she's messed up. Well, I quantify where I say she's messed up, but I make no judgment on that. I also make reference to how all of the survivors I've met are damaged. Some deal with it and find strength in it, but to say they're not damaged, I think, would be wrong by me. But that's the by the by. You're not making any allegations. You're saying what I've said. You fairly say she associated with people who may be exploiting her, but say her story doesn't add up. I think I'm saying there's more to her story, which is the information I've been sharing, but that's by the by. Your words demean her. There is discussion of political interference and that she has been persuaded to speak positively of the plans for the grooming gang inquiry on Good Morning Britain. You play a video which you suggest destroys her. I played 2 videos. 3 videos actually if you include Jess Phillips' video. And I think it's very clear that when I make reference to destroys her, it destroys her position on supporting Jess Phillips and her motivation. Because she herself has articulated her motivation, hasn't she? Her motivation is the bigger picture. Did I not explain that last week? You can't selectively pick what you want, David. You've quantified to the second how long my video was. So how can you omit the context of what I said? You play a video which you suggest destroys her. You call her a campaign lead for Jess Phillips. Well, how would the ordinary person view? Did she not come out in defence of Jess Phillips? And that she's there to manage the optics. You play a video of PMQs with an exchange on the grooming gang inquiry between Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch. Your train of thought is to build a picture that the Labour Party is controlling the process by using Miss Walker-Roberts, but in doing so, you attack her character repeatedly. Oh. Your ex-post repeatedly mentioned Samantha Walker-Roberts over the subsequent days. This letter is not designed to be politically motivated. You are entitled to your views, many of which are entirely valid. Your willingness to express your views in this sphere is laudable. Nevertheless, Samantha Walker-Roberts has become distressed by your repeated mentioning of her and her views. Over the course of a week? On a campaign that's been 7 years? And I've not mentioned her in God knows how long, until she brought herself into the public sphere by the Guardian interview, the Good Morning Britain interview, and so on and so on. As you can appreciate, we are all entitled to our views. You are entitled to yours, but to repeatedly criticise Samantha Walker-Roberts' views, behaviour and to speculate on her motives has the potential to become harassment. I write to make you aware that Miss Walker-Roberts has become distressed and fearful as a result of your repeated comments about her. I know you to be a reasonable person and you are able to appreciate the vulnerability of survivors. No, she's not in this space as a survivor. David, she's in this space as a campaigner, as an activist. I'd say a Labour Party activist. A Jess Phillips ambassador. Samantha being one, it appears you have made your point and I ask you that you do not repeat your comments. Who do you think you are? Who do any of you think you are? So you want me to stay silent whilst a campaigner openly supports Jess Phillips as the right person to lead this and this inquiry to be widened and to help hide the racial dimension, and you want me to stay silent? I'm not bullying her, I'm not harassing her. I've not mentioned her name until she involved herself in this last week. And if you go on X, what I've done is commented each time someone else has attempted to use that to say, look, here's a survivor. Here's what they've got to say. Here is my response to these people. I'll read it. Dear Mr. Greenwood, he says, I acknowledge receipt of your letter dated the 31st of October 2025, sent on behalf of Samantha Walker-Roberts. Its contents are noted. Having reviewed the claims and characterizations it contains, I reject entirely the suggestion that my lawful commentary constitutes harassment or any other form of misconduct. My work concerns matters of significant public interest, namely the political and institutional handling of the grooming gang scandal and the associated national inquiry process. Over the past 7 years, I have been one of the leading campaigners exposing systematic failings within police forces, local authorities and government agencies in relation to the phenomenon now known as the Pakistani rape gangs. My investigations, public reporting, community advocacy and direct campaigning helped force political leaders to confront these failures and ultimately contributed to the establishment of the current national inquiry. Ms. Walker-Roberts has voluntarily entered this arena, giving multiple interviews, including on Good Morning Britain and Talk TV, and making public statements in explicit support of Jess Phillips MP and Labour's approach to the issue. She has also been named and quoted in major national outlets including The Guardian, ITV News and the BBC. Significantly, Ms. Walker-Roberts continued to give media interviews and make political statements after my commentary was published. As recently as the 29th of October 2025, she was quoted again in The Guardian article titled Female Survivors of Grooming Gangs Demand Apology from Nigel Farage. Yeah, I'll bring it up. Here you go. This article appeared 2 days before your letter. That interview demonstrates that Ms. Walker-Roberts remains actively and willingly engaged in highly political media coverage. Your letter, dated the 31st of October 2025, arrived 2 days after Miss Walker-Roberts had once again put herself forward in The Guardian to shape the national narrative. It is therefore hard to escape the conclusion that I am being asked to remain silent while she continues to speak. In that light, your correspondence reads less as a concern about harassment and more as an attempt to censor legitimate public commentary, while the narrative Ms. Walker-Roberts supports, one of support and trust in the Labour Party and Jess Phillips, is being amplified across national platforms. By her own actions, Ms. Walker-Roberts has become a public figure for the purpose of political commentary and scrutiny. The courts have long recognised that those who participate in public debate, especially on issues of national concern, must tolerate a greater degree of public scrutiny and criticism than private individuals. And I quote, case law, Thomas versus News Group Newspapers Limited 2001. Trimmingham versus Associated Newspapers Limited. So on. For the avoidance of doubt, I have not attempted to contact Ms. Walker-Roberts directly, either online or offline. I have not sent her private messages, emails, or any other form of personal communication. My commentary has been confined solely to the public domain, responding to her own public statements, media appearances, and party political advocacy. My concerns, my comments even, therefore fall squarely within the protection afforded by Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which safeguards the right to freedom of expression, including the freedom to impart information and ideas of matters of public interest. As confirmed in another case, Handyside versus United Kingdom, as far back as 1976, these protections extend not only to information or ideas that are favourably received, but also to those that, inverted commas, quote, offend, shock, or disturb the state or any sector of the population. In this context, I have not disclosed private or sensitive personal information about Ms. Walker-Roberts. She's got a book, for crying out loud. I have not encouraged hostility, threats, or harassment. Not at all. And I never will. And any of you who saw what I did last week will saw how troubling I found it. I have not sought or initiated any personal contact with her. My comments were based entirely on material she herself placed in the public domain. My analysis was conducted in good faith, and I've just done it again so you can see. And I believe it is in the public interest, don't you? Concerning a national scandal that has already been the subject of multiple government reviews, police inquiries, and parliamentary debate. You suggest that my commentary may amount to harassment. Respectfully, that claim is unfounded in law. The Protection from Harassment Act 1997 requires a course of conduct that is oppressive and unreasonable, not merely unwelcome speech or criticism. And there's more. Magoski versus Guys and St. Thomas NHS Trust 2006. There's more case law. And also as clarified in Thomas versus News Group Newspapers. While press publications can form the basis of a harassment claim in rare cases, such liability arises only where the conduct is truly oppressive and unacceptable. I'm speaking every time she's speaking and releasing something via the national press. In fact, she's got the voice. I haven't got the voice. GB News won't do this because they've bottled it. Talk TV won't do this. Times Radio, who've got that bloody clip, won't share or comment on this. And if I hadn't spoken out, this narrative would have been allowed to have gone unchallenged. The High Court dismissed the harassment claim brought by a political aide against the press, finding that a voluntary engagement in public life meant she had a reduced expectation of privacy and that robust criticism of her conduct and role fell within the bounds of lawful expression. Once again, am I harassing her? I note your acknowledgement that I am entitled to my views and that many of them are valid. However, I reject entirely the implications that I must refrain from discussing Miss Walker-Roberts' public interventions because she feels distressed by legitimate scrutiny. Freedom of expression, especially in matters concerning political accountability and institutional trust, cannot be curtailed simply because a public advocate objects to critical analysis. Moreover, Ms. Walker-Roberts has repeatedly and publicly articulated her own political motivations. She has stated that she wishes to consider the bigger picture and that the issue of grooming gangs has nothing to do with race. She has also explained that she takes this position in part to prevent groups such as Reform UK or supporters of Tommy Robinson from using statistical evidence about offender demographics to advance their own agendas. These are overtly political stances, reflecting conscious decisions to influence how the national debate is framed and to shape the public narrative around one of the most serious policy failures in modern Britain. Having chosen to enter that debate and to advocate for a specific narrative that downplays certain facts to achieve a political objective, Ms. Walker-Roberts cannot simultaneously claim immunity from examination or criticism. In a democratic society, those who seek to influence public understanding of such consequential issues must expect their statements, reasoning and motives to be scrutinised, particularly when their interventions affect public trust in institutional accountability and racial justice. Ms. Walker-Roberts has publicly stated that she is a Muslim revert and has published a book. These are self-disclosures which further establish her as a public figure, an author whose statements are subject to legitimate analysis. I remain mindful of the sensitivities surrounding survivors of abuse and the importance of treating all individuals with dignity. My work has consistently sought to expose institutional failures, not to demean victims. However, when survivors become spokespeople for political narratives, the public claim and affiliations become open to examination. That is how democratic accountability functions. If Ms. Walker-Roberts genuinely feels that public analysis of her televised interviews and political advocacy amounts to harassment, then perhaps she should reconsider assuming such a high-profile and explicitly political role. Public figures who actively participate in shaping national debate must accept that their statements and positions will attract scrutiny, commentary, and disagreement, all of which are fundamental features of a free and democratic society. In conclusion, I will continue to exercise my right to engage in lawful commentary on issues of public importance, including the political use of survivor testimony in shaping national policy. My conduct has been and will always remain within the boundaries of the law, ethics, and the principles of fair comment. If you want to sue me for harassment, go for it. If you want to try and get the police to arrest me, go for it. I'm not demeaning her. I'm not calling her names. I believe the context of what she has previously said is important when it comes to her very public advocacy on this issue. And so there's no doubt of what this looks like. The 12th of January 2025 was that Times interview clip. YouTube interviews. Long form discussions. There's 2 of them I put in early 2025. There's a book, Undefeated, The Abused Life I Never Gave Up. She co-authored with this woman called Ann Cusack. And you can buy it from Amazon, Waterstones, World of Books and Love Reading. The Guardian article, 5 grooming gang survivors told PM they will stay on panel only if Jess Phillips remains in post. Here you go. Exclusive. In fresh controversy, the women write to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood to speak up for safeguarding minister. You can see. 3rd paragraph. One of the group, Samantha Walker-Roberts. There you go. BBC Radio 4 Today programme. I'm not joking here. Still available on BBC Sounds. You can see The World Tonight. The search is expected to take months after 2 leading candidates pulled out. We speak to survivor Samantha Walker-Roberts, who will only support the inquiry if safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips continues in her role. So you can see what's going on here. She has a voice. It's a voice that the mainstream media wants to hear and promote. And the context I provide I think some people want hidden, don't you? You need to listen to her. Let's listen to her. Are you going to sue me for playing the BBC radio interview, guys? You can do.
Hello, good evening. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome to The World Tonight. I'm Jane Hill. The grooming gang's inquiry is plunged into further chaos tonight as the government accepts it could take months to find a new chair. And there are calls from abuse survivors for the Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips to quit. But one survivor tells us why she's written to the Prime Minister backing Jess Phillips to stay.
Jess has been there as a support to all survivors, and she's been true to her word with what she's promised and what she's told us. Some survivors have had concerns around it being a bit of a cover-up, but this is about trying to get past our fears.
Also tonight, President Putin has hit back at new US sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil companies. We'll ask whether the move could push the former strictly judge.
Back the safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips, after a number of survivors called on her to resign over her handling of the inquiry. Others have insisted she must stay. Here's our political correspondent, Nick Ardley.
The process around the independent inquiry has, in recent days, been thrown into chaos. 5 survivors have called on the safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips, to resign. 4 of them have quit the process. Frustrated, Ms Phillips had dismissed claims the inquiry might be broadened beyond a focus on grooming gangs. But 5 other survivors have backed Ms Phillips and specifically called for the remit of the inquiry to include other forms of child sexual exploitation. So there is disagreement about what exactly the inquiry should look into, and there is confusion about who might chair it. The 2 people thought to have been in the running have ruled themselves out, and now government sources have acknowledged it will be months before they can find the right person to oversee the process. The government is said to be re-engaging with survivors to see what they want from the inquiry's chair. And there is determination in government that Ms Phillips should keep her job. The Prime Minister backed her again today publicly.
Samantha Walker-Roberts is one of the 5 abuse survivors who've said they will only stay with the inquiry if Jess Phillips remains involved. In an interview with The World Tonight, she praised the safeguarding minister but acknowledged other survivors' concerns.
Jess has been there as a support to all survivors, and she's been true to her word with what she's promised and what she's told us. There has been moments where she's been unable to tell us things due to the fact that it's not been mentioned in Parliament as of that time, and I respect that completely, but some survivors have had concerns around that regarding it being a bit of a cover-up.
And you can hear more from that interview shortly after this bulletin. A British billions as the Union and the government
suggest some slopes say they're struggling at the table.
American sanction of the
pled guilty to money laundering. Media CZ
member of the Senate, thousands here.
Keep the safeguards Phillips does. We'll be hearing from one of those 5 in a few minutes.
Cover up, but she is a liar. Makes them change.
Told MPs that allegations of intentional delay, lack of interest or widening of the inquiry scope are false. Well, that prompted this response from one of the abuse survivors, Fiona Goddard.
I want an inquiry, but I want it done properly. I do not want another cover-up. Hopefully, leaving makes them change the direction it's going in. It forces the hand, so the inquiry is done properly. She's called me a liar, Jess Phillips. She's called me a liar, basically. She's saying, in response to my resignation letter, where I called it out, she's saying that it's untrue. But she is a liar.
Well, the Prime Minister was asked today whether he had confidence in Jess Phillips.
Yes, of course I do. Jess has been working on issues involving violence against women and girls for many, many years. She and Louise Casey, who's going to also play a part in the inquiry, are the right people to lead it. But I want to address and reassure survivors, all survivors, we must assure them that this will be an inquiry that will go wherever the evidence takes it. They deserve answers, and I intend that this process will give them the answers that they deserve.
The Prime Minister there, well, the government does now accept that it could take months to find a chair for the inquiry, which was announced by Keir Starmer back in June. Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to our political editor, Chris Mason, and began by asking him whether he thinks Jess Phillips is indeed safe in her role.
Yes, I think she is. The reason for that, there is a desire within the Home Office that she carries on in the role. There's a desire in Downing Street that she carries on in the role. And there is a recognition that this is incredibly difficult. And I was conscious, reporting on this over the last 24 hours, that there is a journalistic inclination towards tilting our ears towards people who are outspoken. And of course, we'd heard those victims who were not happy with Jess Phillips authentically setting out their view and their reasons for coming to that conclusion. But of course, there's plenty. There's 30, or there were originally 30 people on this panel, most of whom we've not heard from publicly. And then, of course, today we heard from some making the counter argument that they want to stay involved as long as Jess Phillips is in post.
So that's the BBC confirming that those 5 people who came and gave a counter position, and it aided with Jess Phillips remaining in position. The Home Office wants her, Downing Street wants her, and now we've got 5 survivors who come out and want her. Yeah, that's not me. That's the BBC. Sue them. Absolute.
Completely. A lot of the times with Jess, she knows that obviously it's quite a difficult process, this whole thing, and it takes a toll in our lives. And just by having that message, I hope you're doing okay, without prying or even asking to do with anything about what's going on, just genuinely wondering how we're doing. And that means a lot to us, and especially the fact that she has such a good background and knowledge around this.
So what do you make of the fact that some survivors have walked away and they say she is one of the main reasons they've quit?
I can understand why they're feeling that, and it's really sad to see that they're coming from a place of trauma. They're trying to find any evidence in regarding to concerns of cover-ups, race, ethnicity, but this is about trying to get past our fears and build this new future that we could have.
We understand that about 30 survivors have been part of this inquiry. 4 of them have now quit. Do you feel that the opinions of those 4 are representative? Do you feel there are others in the group who may feel the way they do?
Yes, there are a few that do support their views, but there's also quite a few that are supporting my views along with everybody else who has signed the agreement with me. So it is a bit of a difficult situation, and I respect obviously their views and opinions on this. They've gone through trauma just as much as we all have, but at the end of the day, all trauma matters, every victim matters, and every survivor matters.
They did have some specific concerns. For example, the statement from Fiona Goddard talked about concerns about the expansion of the inquiry scope beyond grooming gangs. That was a specific concern of hers. Do you share that concern at all?
No, I share the concern that I don't understand why it's been narrowed. And it's only since the Casey audit where the narrative has now changed specifically to grooming gangs. So it's actually left me quite upset that this has been narrowed so massively, because it leads people like myself to be kept out of it.
2 potential candidates to chair this inquiry have stepped back from the process this week. What sort of person would you like to see chair the inquiry?
From past experience with the Andy Burnham Assurance Review, I was really happy with Gary Ridgway and Malcolm Newson, due to obviously the fact they found evidence and information out that I never knew in the whole of 19 years of trying to find things out. So I have some trust in people like them.
And for our listeners, just explain who they are and what their role is.
Gary Ridgway was an ex-police officer and Malcolm Newson was an ex-social worker, and they both headed the Andy Burnham Assurance Review in 2020.
And yet there are some survivors we know who have said they just don't want anyone who worked for the police, was involved with the police, to be heading this inquiry because they just don't have the trust in them.
It's such a difficult one, and that's all based around trauma and how people have dealt with that. Some people have dealt with it better than others, and I think this is around that sensitive topic.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, of course, but are you saying you understand that and you understand where they're coming from because of the trauma, but in a practical sense, in terms of getting this inquiry going, you think they're mistaken?
Yes, I don't think they should be making decisions based on it being trauma-focused. It should be more realistic. And we have to think realistic now that this has been going on for so many years and we don't want to have another national inquiry again.
I mean, the government is saying tonight they think it could take months now to find someone to lead this inquiry. What do you think about a further delay?
The delay hasn't bothered me. I'm glad it's actually taken long because it's showing that there is extensive work going into this. It's similar with the Hillsborough. That took a very long time. That took over a decade. This needs to be the same.
I think everything that you're explaining so eloquently just reminds us what a vast topic this is. And would you say it's not surprising that no one's going to agree on every single element of this because people are coming to this with different experiences?
That's the problem, and I'm seeing it as a bigger picture, and I'm wanting to make sure that everybody gets involved in this, because I've had to fight many battles to have a voice in a lot of things, and this is one thing that we've never had before, and it's an opportunity to make sure that all voices are heard and all statistics are done for a national scale of all types of abuse, because we don't have that yet, not officially.
This inquiry has been so much in the news this week. Do you have any concerns that it is getting politicised?
Yeah, all these political parties are just using us, and it's wrong how they're using us all as pawns at the moment. We have a voice and we can speak for ourselves in this, but the way they're trying to manipulate it to suit their own narrative is completely absurd.
Samantha Walker-Roberts there talking to me just before we came on air.
All these political parties are using us. So she acknowledges that the political parties are using them, Fiona Ellie maybe, but she isn't. She's too smart to be used. She's supporting Jess Phillips. She says Jess Phillips sends her text messages, making sure she's all right. She wants to help build a new future. I'm not sure what this new future is. She doesn't understand why it's been narrowed. Well, I don't know what I'm on about here. For the last 7 years, we've been campaigning on a grooming gang inquiry. We've not been campaigning on on a broad child sex exploitation inquiry. We've been campaigning on this specific issue because these are these are racially motivated, religiously justified, and politically protected crimes. It's very, very specific. It's been narrowed because this specific type of crime has been covered up. And we've been campaigning on this. And she talks about Gary Ridgway and Malcolm Newsom. And there she's been more disingenuous than anyone else in reference to Andy Burnham's assurance review. She was excluded from giving testimony to Andy Burnham's assurance review and only was able to have a meeting with Newsom and Ridgway after the direct intervention of Maggie Oliver. So these guys weren't meeting her, and the entire framework of that assurance review had been set up in such a way where it excluded the testimonies of the actual survivors, her being one of them, which was being looked at. And it's only as a direct consequence of the involvement of Maggie Oliver that they met with her. No. Name the court. Name the court. David Greenwood. Name it. And you'll find by the time you and I are finished, your firm's entire reputation as an advocate for rape gang survivors will be completely destroyed. Name the court. Issue the papers. Bring it. If you're finding value in this work, please, there's just me. It's as simple as that. I have no one else here helping me, no one doing any of my work with me. As well as doing the work I do, I've got to fight off this nonsense. I'm looking for my mouse now. Here we go, I found it. So please, if you find value in this work, our subscribers are pitifully low. I always see some of the comments that you guys put up. Nothing I can do about that. 7 years in. In fact, YouTube sent me a message today saying I'm 5 years of putting videos out. It's actually just under 5 years because since we did open the channel and then started the videos, it was a couple of months. But before that, we were on Facebook, so we're actually over 5 years. All of the content is for free. There's a newsletter you get, I think is of value. It puts everything in context and order. Takes you 2 seconds to sign up, Red Wall and the Rabble. You pay only if you want to pay. And you buy me a coffee to keep me going only if you want to. I think one of them recently made reference to me as an effing scumbag because I put the links up to this stuff. I didn't crowdfund my organisation. I don't work for an organisation. It's just me. The corner of my living room. 7 years in. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Budisia. Thank you. Thank you, Darcy. Clive. And Leaf. Thank you so much. Well, I'll send that letter to him tomorrow. And of course, the offer's open to Samantha. I know you're listening. Get in touch with someone and I'll have you on. I'll ask you questions and you can put your case across. Thank you, Ed. So, if you were to ask me what's gone on and how Samantha's found herself in The Guardian, BBC, ITV, Good Morning Britain, I would say to you that's a government response to opening up doors where a counter-argument was presented to shore up Jess Phillips in her role. That would be my analysis on what took place. I saw that, I heard that. Andy Gold got an extra 16,000 subscribers on Heretics than that when he put my video out. I'm 5 years in to Red Wall and the Rabble. I've got just over 7,000 in total. I can't do anything about that, can I, mate? I get I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not a broadcaster. I'm not a radio person. I'm not any of that. I'm a campaigner. And this is a tool through which I campaign. And I think we've come a long way, don't you? We've come a long way. I'm my painter, I use the word in context, my drugs are wearing off, as in the Beechams or the Beechams, they're not Beechams, they're whatever the cheap supermarket equivalent is. They're wearing off. I'm getting tired. I'm hoping to come back tomorrow. I've got a lot more to go through with you. A lot more. My intention is to come back tomorrow or Tuesday, hopefully back tomorrow. I'm due to give an interview tomorrow morning to someone who's been persistent in wanting an interview with me for a podcast. So I'm doing that at 9 o'clock in the morning. What do you want me to say, people? This is my life. And whatever my life is, look what they're trying to do. Look what they're trying to hide. And how many victims there are. 100,000 more. If we don't do this, the government wins. You can see that. We're fighting the government here. Someone asked earlier, what next? I'll tell you what next. What we achieved in the last 2 weeks from what they wanted to do to now. We won that exchange. That would have been nice if we took Jess Phillips out. But you've seen what they've done. They've hidden behind survivors. I'd even argue they were involved in mobilising those survivors. And now we move on to the next phase. And you can either believe we've had nothing to do with it, or you can perhaps believe that we might have had a little bit to do with it. In which case, watch what we do next. Because if you followed me for as long as some people have, we're not playing tiddlywinks here. We've outmaneuvered them at every step to get this far, and we'll continue to outmaneuver them. The only thing I'm genuinely worried about is we need the numbers. It's what I've been saying for the last 5 or 6 months, and we need the numbers. And you've seen why. Because they've got all the legacy media on board. And they've also managed to either put pressure on, or a decision has been taken with Charlie Peters and GB News not to share the information about Samantha Roberts' political positions. Hey, when someone gives me £2, I smile the most, because I know how much that £2 means to you. So thank you so much. My name is Raj Amir. This was a Reticent 9 transmission. A very good night.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.